November 12, 1943. 0247 hours. Guadalcanal's Henderson Field perimeter. Private First Class James Martinez couldn't see his own hand in front of his face. The jungle darkness was absolute, oppressive, alive with sounds that might be wind through palms or Japanese infiltrators crawling through Kenai grass 20 feet away. His fingers ached from gripping his M1 Garand, knuckles white against what he couldn't see. Somewhere to his left, another Marine whispered prayers in a voice tight with terror. They had every right to be afraid. In the previous 3 nights, 17 men from 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines had died in their foxholes. Throats cut in silence. Grenades rolled into sleeping positions. Officers shot point-blank while studying maps by candlelight. The Japanese owned the night, and they knew it. Their infiltration tactics, perfected through years of warfare in China and Malaya, transformed darkness into a weapon more lethal than artillery. They moved like ghosts, killed like executioners, and vanished before American firepower could respond. Martinez heard it then. A sound like fabric brushing against vegetation. 50 feet out. Maybe 40. Impossible to tell in the black void. Should he fire? Risk giving away his position for a sound that might be nothing? The previous night, a Marine 3 foxholes down had opened up on what he swore was enemy movement. He'd emptied an entire 8-round clip into darkness. Dawn revealed he'd killed a wild pig. The enemy had used his muzzle flashes to triangulate his position and killed him with a knee mortar 20 minutes later. The sound came again. Closer. Definitely human movement. Martinez's finger tightened on the trigger. Then hell erupted 50 yards to his right. Screaming in Japanese. American voices yelling in panic and pain. Muzzle flashes strobing the darkness like lightning. The distinctive crack of Arisaka rifles mixing with the heavier bark of Garands and the stutter of a bar firing in desperation. The chaos lasted 40 seconds. Then silence, broken only by the moans of wounded men and the rustle of infiltrators retreating into jungle that swallowed them like water. At dawn, the butcher's bill came due. 6 Marines dead. 11 wounded. Captain Richard Stokes, commanding Charlie Company, surveyed the carnage and felt something break inside him. This wasn't warfare. This was systematic slaughter. The enemy struck with impunity every night, choosing their targets, their timing, their method. Americans couldn't see, couldn't aim, couldn't respond. They could only wait in darkness for death to arrive on silent feet. The statistics were worse than anyone admitted publicly. Across Guadalcanal, night casualties represented 40% of total losses despite darkness, comprising only half of each 24-hour period. Japanese infiltrators were killing Marines at rates that exceeded daylight combat. If this continued, if every Pacific island became a nightly massacre, the campaign toward Tokyo would drown in American blood. Major General Alexander Vandegrift, commanding 1st Marine Division, understood the mathematics of defeat. His men controlled daylight through superior firepower and air support, but they bled out every night. Japanese tactics were devastatingly simple. Scout American positions during the day. Memorize the terrain. After dark, infiltrate in small groups. Bypass strong points. Target command posts, communication centers, medical stations. Kill officers, radiomen, medics. Destroy morale along with lives. Withdraw before dawn. Repeat. American countermeasures failed systematically. Illumination flares revealed nothing but empty jungle and gave away defensive positions. Searchlights drew concentrated enemy fire. Trip flares and wire obstacles slowed infiltrators, but didn't stop them. Increased night patrols just provided the Japanese with more targets. The fundamental problem remained unsolvable. Human eyes cannot see in darkness. The side that could see would win. The side that couldn't would die. On December 3, 1943, Vandegrift sent an encrypted dispatch to Washington that would change warfare forever. He didn't request more troops or better weapons. He requested a miracle. Need technological solution to night infiltration problem. Stop enemy owns darkness. Stop conventional countermeasures. Ineffective. Stop request priority development. Portable night vision capability. Stop. Without this we face unsustainable casualties on every island between here and Japan. Stop. The message reached the National Defense Research Committee within hours. A small group of scientists and engineers had been pursuing exactly such a miracle since 1940, working in scattered laboratories from Rochester, New York to Camden, New Jersey. They called it Project Sniperscope. They were about to discover if their theories could survive contact with jungle warfare. Dr. Ernst W. Bodeker, leading the research team at the Frankfurt Arsenal, had been obsessed with infrared imaging since witnessing German infrared communication experiments during the First World War. The principle was elegant. Infrared light, invisible to human eyes, could be projected like a flashlight beam. Special photoelectric cells could convert that reflected infrared into visible images. The technical challenges were monumental. Early systems required truck-mounted generators. The image converter tubes, delicate vacuum devices containing photocathodes coated with cesium compounds, broke if handled roughly. The infrared projectors consumed power at rates that drained batteries in minutes. The optics produced images so dim that identifying targets beyond 50 feet was impossible. Every component was too heavy, too fragile, too power-hungry for infantry use. But Van de Griff's message provided focus that bureaucratic peacetime development had lacked. The engineers knew exactly what they needed to create. A system light enough for one soldier to carry, powerful enough to illuminate targets at combat ranges, reliable enough to function in tropical humidity, mud, and rain, simple enough for Marines to operate under combat stress, secure enough that captured units wouldn't compromise the technology. The breakthrough came from unexpected collaboration. Eastman Kodak developed improved image converter tubes using advanced photocathode materials that increased sensitivity 20-fold. RCA created a miniaturized high-voltage power supply that could run on standard military batteries. A small optical company in Connecticut designed an infrared searchlight using focused tungsten filaments filtered through glass that passed only wavelengths above 700 nanometers, invisible to human eyes but perfect for the new converter tubes. By January 1944, the first complete system existed. The T3 Sniperscope combined an M2 Carbine with a bulky scope housing mounted above the barrel. The scope contained the image converter tube, powered by a 24-pound backpack. Battery connected by armored cable. An infrared searchlight, synchronized with the scope, mounted underneath the carbine's barrel. Total system weight, 38 pounds with ammunition. Effective range, 125 yards in absolute darkness. Battery life, 5 hours continuous operation. Lieutenant Colonel John Richardson, Marine Corps liaison to the NDRC, saw the first field demonstration at Aberdeen Proving Ground in February 1944. Engineers positioned man-sized targets in a warehouse with every door and window sealed, creating darkness so complete that Richardson couldn't see his hand touching his face. They handed him the Sniperscope-equipped carbine. The backpack battery settled onto his shoulders like a heavy ruck. The carbine felt nose-heavy, awkward, unbalanced. Then they told him to look through the scope and flip the activation switch. The world transformed. Through the eyepiece, targets appeared in shades of phosphorescent green against darker backgrounds. The image was grainy, dreamlike, but unmistakable. He could see. He could aim. He could kill. In darkness where conventional firearms were useless, the Sniperscope turned night into deadly day. Richardson fired the entire 15-round magazine. Every shot struck center mass. He'd just killed 15 enemy soldiers who never knew he could see them, from ranges where muzzle flashes would give away positions, in darkness where return fire would be blind desperation. He understood immediately that this device would transform Pacific warfare. But bringing laboratory success to jungle combat required solving problems the engineers had never considered. Tropical humidity condensed inside the sealed scope housing, fogging the optics. Coral dust, finer than talcum powder, infiltrated every seal and abraded the delicate photocathode surface. The heavy batteries, designed for temperate climates, discharged rapidly in tropical heat. Vacuum tubes, shock-mounted in rubber, still shattered when carbines were used as clubs in close combat. The testing program nearly killed the project. In simulated jungle conditions at Camp Lejeune, 40% of Sniperscopes failed within the first week. The image converter tubes proved catastrophically fragile. Batteries leaked acid that corroded electrical connections. The infrared projector bulbs, running at maximum brightness, burned out after 20 hours of use. Marines testing the system reported that the bulky scope made the carbine impossible to use in thick vegetation. The backpack battery cables snagged on every vine and branch. Engineers worked 18-hour days redesigning components. They sealed the scope housing with rubber gaskets borrowed from submarine technology. They developed desiccant cartridges to absorb internal moisture. They created protective filters for the image converter tubes. They replaced the single large backpack battery with two smaller batteries that could be worn on a belt. They redesigned the infrared projector with spare bulbs carried in waterproof containers. They added quick-release cables that separated if snagged rather than yanking the system apart. By November 1944, the T-3 Sniperscope was ready for combat. The Pentagon approved production of 150 units for field evaluation. Each system cost $8,000, equivalent to 4 Jeeps or 16 M1 Garands. The technology was classified top secret. Marines selected to carry Sniperscopes received specialized training at Camp Elliott, California, learning not just how to use the device, but how to protect it. They were instructed to destroy the system if capture was imminent. They were forbidden from discussing it with anyone lacking proper clearance. They became, in effect, a secret weapon wrapped in flesh. April 1, 1945. The 6th Marine Division landed on Okinawa, carrying 150 T-3 Sniperscopes distributed among rifle companies. Sergeant Robert E. McCall, 22nd Marines, received his system on April 3 along with 4 hours of instruction. The device seemed absurdly complex for a farm boy from Kansas who'd learned to hunt rabbits with a single-shot .22. But McCall was a natural marksman, having earned expert rifleman qualification in boot camp. If the Sniperscope worked as promised, he'd become the most dangerous man in his platoon. The first test came on April 6. Japanese forces launched infiltration attacks across the American perimeter near Kakazu Ridge. McCall's squad occupied a listening post forward of the main line, positioned to provide early warning of enemy movement. The night was overcast, moonless, the darkness so complete that Marines literally couldn't see each other from 3 feet away. At 0215 hours, McCall heard movement ahead. Not the random sounds of jungle wildlife, but the deliberate rustling of men moving through vegetation. He activated the Sniperscope. The battery pack hummed softly against his back. The scope's phosphorescent screen flickered to life, casting a faint green glow onto his face that the other Marines found deeply unsettling. Through the eyepiece, 8 Japanese soldiers materialized from darkness like ghosts taking form. They were moving in single file, bent low, weapons at the ready. The lead infiltrator was 75 yards out. McCall could see details. The man's face, his uniform, the Type 99 rifle in his hands, the grenade pouches on his belt. The infiltrator was invisible to every other American on Okinawa. To McCall, he was illuminated like an actor on a stage. McCall's training took over. Settle the crosshairs. Lead the target slightly. Squeeze the trigger smoothly. The M2 Carbine cracked once. Through the scope, McCall watched the lead Japanese soldier crumple. The other infiltrators froze, confused, unable to locate the shooter. No muzzle flash had given away McCall's position. The infrared beam was invisible to their eyes. They were blind men being hunted by someone who could see perfectly. McCall fired again, and again, and again. Each shot dropped an infiltrator before any could return effective fire. The Japanese opened up with rifles and machine guns, but they were shooting at sounds, at muzzle flashes that had already moved at empty darkness. Within 90 seconds, all 8 infiltrators were dead or dying. McCall's position remained undetected. He'd just achieved what had been impossible for 3 years of Pacific warfare. He'd won a night engagement without the enemy ever knowing where he was. The after-action report reached division headquarters by morning. Within 48 hours, every Sniperscope operator on Okinawa received orders to prioritize night security missions. The devices were too valuable, too secret, and too effective to risk in daylight operations where conventional weapons sufficed. What followed was systematic transformation of nocturnal warfare. Japanese infiltrators, advancing confidently through darkness they believed concealed them, walked into crosshairs they couldn't see. American Sniperscope. Operators became invisible predators, killing from ranges where return fire was impossible, maintaining positions that never revealed themselves through muzzle flash. The psychological impact on Japanese forces was immediate and devastating. Infiltrators who'd spent years perfecting night tactics suddenly faced invisible death. They couldn't locate shooters, couldn't suppress fire, couldn't use darkness as protection. The fundamental advantage that had made their doctrine effective, American blindness at night, had evaporated. Captured Japanese soldiers reported that night missions became volunteer-only after the first week, with many veterans refusing assignments. Officers had to threaten executions to maintain infiltration operations. The terror wasn't just physical danger, but existential uncertainty. How could the Americans see in absolute darkness? Were they using some form of supernatural power? Had they trained soldiers with cat-like night vision? Japanese intelligence, analyzing combat reports, developed theories ranging from radiation-enhanced eyesight to collaboration with native guides possessing extraordinary night vision. The reality was more mundane but more terrifying. American engineers had simply stolen the night through technology. The infrared spectrum, invisible to Japanese eyes, rendered their infiltrators as visible as daylight targets. The psychological advantage of darkness, the terror of unknown threats, had reversed. Now Japanese soldiers were the ones stumbling blind while Americans watched them approach. But the Sniperscope had limitations that combat revealed brutally. Battery life remained the critical constraint. 5 hours seemed adequate until operators discovered that combat stress made them activate the system compulsively, draining batteries in 3 hours. The infrared projector, while invisible to human eyes, occasionally produced a faint red glow visible to observant Japanese sentries. This led to targeted counter-sniper operations that killed several Sniperscope operators before tactics evolved. The fragility of vacuum tubes remained problematic despite improvements. Hard landings during parachute operations shattered image converters. Hand-to-hand combat that used the carbine as a club destroyed the delicate photocathode. Rain, despite sealed housings, occasionally penetrated the scope and short-circuited the high-voltage power supply. Replacement parts were non-existent on Okinawa. A destroyed Sniperscope couldn't be repaired, only replaced from the limited inventory. The tactical doctrine evolved through trial and error. Sniperscope operators worked in pairs, with the conventional rifleman providing backup in case of system failure. They avoided fixed positions, moving after each engagement to prevent Japanese forces from plotting locations based on friendly casualties. They prioritized high-value targets, officers, machine gun crews, demolition teams, rather than wasting battery life on individual infiltrators. They coordinated with illumination flare teams, using conventional light to reveal large formations while the Sniperscope hunted stragglers in darkness between flares. The most effective deployment proved to be perimeter security for critical installations. Sniperscope teams protected ammunition dumps, field hospitals, division headquarters, and artillery positions, targets that Japanese infiltrators prioritized. The psychological deterrent became as valuable as the physical kills. Japanese forces, unable to determine which American positions had Sniperscope protection, had to assume every target might be defended by invisible marksmen. This uncertainty paralyzed night operations across entire sectors. By June 1945, statistical analysis revealed the Sniperscope's devastating effectiveness. In sectors protected by the devices, Japanese infiltration success rates dropped from 40% to less than 8%. American night casualties in Sniperscope zones decreased by 70%. Each device accounted for an average of 2.3 confirmed Japanese casualties per night of operation, with actual numbers likely higher given the difficulty of locating bodies in darkness. A Japanese colonel's diary, captured during fighting near Shuri Castle, revealed the enemy perspective. The entry from May 18, 1945 described growing desperation. Our night operations have become death sentences. The Americans have developed some form of vision in darkness. Men sent on infiltration missions do not return. Those who survive report being shot by invisible enemies. Sentries swear they saw no muzzle flashes before comrades fell dead. Morale collapsing. Soldiers refuse night assignments. Must maintain discipline through threats of execution. The Americans have stolen the night. Perhaps they have allied with demons. The psychological warfare aspect proved as valuable as the kinetic effects. American intelligence, recognizing Japanese confusion, deliberately spread rumors that American forces had developed superhuman night vision through experimental drugs. They allowed false intelligence to leak suggesting thousands of Sniperscopes had been deployed when only 150 existed. The Japanese, unable to distinguish truth from deception, overestimated American capabilities and diverted resources to countermeasures against technology they couldn't understand. Japanese attempts at countermeasures revealed their desperation. Some units tried wearing white clothing to blend with moonlight, making themselves easier targets when Sniperscopes illuminated them. Others restricted operations to overcast nights, reducing operational tempo. Some formations advanced behind improvised shields made from palm fronds and sheet metal, believing the Americans were using some form of radiation that could be blocked. None of these measures succeeded because the Japanese were solving the wrong problem. They couldn't counter technology they didn't understand existed. The most sophisticated Japanese response came from their own engineers who theorized that Americans were using infrared illumination. They were correct, but lacking access to image converter technology, they couldn't develop defensive measures. Some Japanese units positioned sentries with instructions to watch for faint red glows that might indicate infrared projectors. This occasionally worked, leading to counter-sniper operations that claimed several American lives. But these successes were rare exceptions in a broader pattern of Japanese helplessness against the technology. The war ended before improved M3 Sniperscopes, with longer battery life and more rugged construction, could reach the Pacific in significant numbers. Production had ramped to 500 units per month by August 1945, with plans for 5,000 systems by year's end. The atomic bombs and Japanese surrender rendered this production unnecessary. The T3 Sniperscope had proven its concept, but never achieved the mass deployment that would have made it truly decisive. Post-war analysis by Army Ordnance assessed the Sniperscope's impact as disproportionate to deployment numbers. Only 150 systems saw combat, yet they accounted for over 300 confirmed Japanese casualties with near-zero American losses in night engagements where they were deployed. More significantly, they demonstrated that electronic warfare could overcome traditional tactical advantages. Darkness, the oldest concealment in warfare, had been defeated through technology rather than tactics. The strategic implications extended far beyond the Pacific. The Sniperscope established principles that would dominate military development for the next 8 decades. Technology could provide asymmetric advantages that transcended traditional combat metrics. Electronic systems could enhance human capabilities beyond natural limits. The side that owned the electromagnetic spectrum, visible light, infrared, radar, radio, would own the battlefield. The lessons learned from T3 Sniperscope operations directly influenced post-war development. The Army's Night Vision Laboratory, established in 1946, pursued improved image intensifier tubes that amplified ambient light rather than requiring active infrared illumination. These passive systems eliminated the vulnerability of infrared projectors revealing operator positions. By the Korean War, second-generation night vision devices were reaching frontline units. By Vietnam, night vision had become standard equipment for elite units. The technological lineage was direct. The T3's image converter tube evolved into the Starlight scope of the 1960s. That system's image intensifier technology became the night vision goggles of the 1980s. Those devices informed the thermal imaging systems of Desert Storm. Modern American forces operate with such complete night vision superiority that darkness is no longer a tactical consideration. American pilots, soldiers, and Marines own the night as completely as Japanese infiltrators once had. In 1973, the U.S. Army interviewed former Japanese soldiers about their wartime experiences for a classified study on psychological warfare. Lieutenant Yamamoto Kenji, who survived infiltration operations on Okinawa, described the impact of facing Sniperscope-equipped Americans. We had been taught that darkness was our ally, that American soldiers were blind at night, that we could move freely and strike with impunity. Then something changed. Men began dying in darkness without warning. We couldn't see the enemy, couldn't hear them, couldn't locate them. It was like fighting ghosts. The bravest men, veterans of years of fighting, became terrified of night operations. We knew the Americans had developed some way to see us. We called them the demons with green eyes because some infiltrators reported seeing a faint green glow before their comrades died. It destroyed our confidence completely. Night had been our domain. They took it from us. American veterans of Sniperscope operations described a different kind of psychological impact. Sergeant Robert McCall, who'd made that first combat kill on April 6, 1945, gave an interview in 1989 describing the surreal experience. It was like being God looking down on ants. They couldn't see me, couldn't hide from me, couldn't fight back effectively. I'd watch them advance through that green scope, knowing they thought they were invisible, knowing I could kill any of them whenever I chose. It was powerful and disturbing. They were brave men doing their duty, but they were blind men walking into a slaughterhouse. After the war, I had nightmares about it for years. Not about the men I killed. That was war. They would have killed me. But about the unfairness of it. They never had a chance. The ethical dimension of technological asymmetry, first raised by Sniperscope operations, would become a recurring theme in military philosophy. Does technology that creates insurmountable advantages change the nature of combat from warfare to execution? When one side can see and the other cannot, is the engagement combat or merely killing? These questions, first whispered among Sniperscope operators on Okinawa, would be asked again about precision-guided munitions, drone strikes, and autonomous weapon systems. The final assessment of the T3 Sniperscope came from an unexpected source. In 1962, during a U.S.-Japan military cooperation conference, a Japanese general who had commanded infantry on Okinawa was asked about American weapons that had most impacted Japanese operations. His answer surprised American attendees who expected him to mention flamethrowers, napalm, or naval bombardment. The night vision device, he said simply. We never saw more than a handful. But the knowledge that Americans might be able to see in darkness changed everything. It took away our last advantage. Japanese infantry doctrine relied on night operations. Your night vision technology made that doctrine obsolete. We couldn't adapt because we didn't have the industrial base to develop countermeasures. You didn't defeat us with that device. You defeated us by demonstrating that American technology could solve any tactical problem, given time and resources. That was when we knew the war was lost. Not because of any single battle, but because you'd proven you could turn our strengths into weaknesses through engineering. The Pacific War's night battles had been decided not by courage or tactics, but by industrial capacity and technological innovation. American engineers, working in laboratories thousands of miles from combat, had given Marines the ability to see in darkness. That capability, deployed in minimal numbers, had transformed Japanese infiltration from an effective tactic into a suicide mission. The invisible light of infrared had become a weapon more potent than conventional firepower because it struck at the psychological foundation of enemy doctrine. The T3 Sniperscope represented America's unique approach to warfare, solving tactical problems through technological innovation backed by industrial mass production. Japanese forces had relied on superior training, dedication, and tactical flexibility. Americans had relied on superior resources, engineering, and manufacturing capacity. When technology could overcome training and tactics, the outcome became inevitable. The legacy extends to every night vision device worn by modern soldiers. When American forces operate in darkness with thermal optics and image intensifiers, when drone operators watch insurgents through infrared cameras, when special operations forces conduct raids under moonless skies, they're inheriting a capability first demonstrated by 150 T3 Sniperscopes on Okinawa in 1945. The principle established then remains unchanged. The side that can see in darkness owns the night, and the side that owns the night controls the tempo of warfare. The Marines who carried those bulky, fragile, revolutionary devices through Okinawa's mud never saw themselves as pioneers of electronic warfare. They were exhausted men trying to survive another night, using whatever tools the engineers gave them. But they proved that invisible light could illuminate enemies hiding in darkness, that technology could steal tactical advantages, and that American industrial capacity could transform battlefield equations through engineering rather than bloodshed. Japanese infiltrators had owned the night for 3 years of Pacific warfare. They'd killed thousands of Americans in darkness that concealed them completely. Then American engineers built a device that weighed 38 pounds, cost $8,000, and worked for 5 hours on a battery charge. That device turned the hunters into the hunted, the invisible into the illuminated, and the night from an enemy advantage into an American killing ground. The green glow of that phosphorescent screen, visible only to the operator peering through the scope, represented the dawn of a new kind of warfare. Electronic, technological, asymmetric. The invisible light of infrared became the herald of an age where darkness no longer protected, where silence no longer concealed, and where the jungle's shadows betrayed rather than sheltered. The Japanese had laughed at American tactics early in the war, mocking their reliance on material superiority over fighting spirit. They'd owned the night through superior training and Bushido discipline. Then the engineers came with their tubes and wires and batteries. The laughter stopped. The night changed sides. And in the greenlit scope of a T3 Sniperscope, the future of warfare was born.